I am Grady Collane in the CapeCod.com News Center, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest from Mass Audubon. Do you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
Yes, thank you, Grady. My name is Melissa Lowe. I'm the regional director here on Cape Cod.
Awesome, and thank you for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to have this Zoom call with me. It's going to be very interesting. I have a lot of questions related to our local environment today, but first and foremost, we have the upcoming Natural History Conference set for Saturday, March 9th. I wanted to ask a little bit more about that, especially since we're seeing a lot more talk about conservation on Cape Cod, especially with wastewater, environmental impacts. But do you mind us introducing a little bit what that idea is, how it got started, and what people can expect?
For sure. Thanks, Grady. Yes, it's been, my gosh, this is the 27th year actually for the Cape Cod Natural History Conference. So this is an annual event. There's only been one year missed during the year of COVID, but it's always been traditionally held at the Cape Cod College in Barnstable. It's sponsored and organized by Mass Audubon, the Wealthy Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, and the region here on Cape Cod. And it's one of those conferences that, prior to my role as regional director, I served as education manager and education coordinator. And this was one of my events that I organized for many, many years. And it is honestly one of my favorites. It brings well, first of all, it happens in March. And so we're all having cabin fever. We want to get outside and kind of get outdoors. Well, I shouldn't say get outdoors, get outside our house and go and meet up with other people and learn from each other, share information. And the conference itself has always been one that, we put out an abstract to request proposals for presentations. And so this is truly what we receive back is what's happening currently now, the hot topics, the things that both are kind of conversations in the coffee shop, to conversations in the offices and in municipal settings. And so this is hitting all sorts of very interesting conservation, natural history research, conservation issues, environmental issues. And we have typically 14 presenters, it's oral presenters, and then we also have a poster presentations, and so people get to mill around, grab a cup of coffee, talk to each other, learn from each other, and share the latest news.
That is awesome. Multiple exhibits, kind of let people can go around, ask some questions. Can they talk directly with the experts? Do a little Q&A right there on the floor?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of this conference is so we have oral presentations that last 15 minutes or so, and then there's time for, question and answer in the audience. And then after during the break sessions, which are typically about 15 to 20 minutes long, you can go up and ask some more clarifying questions or go seek out that presenter. And then there's also, like I said, poster presentations, which are, basically like exhibits almost, with research that's being displayed graphically. And the presenter, the researcher is right by those posters, and you can engage in a conversation with them, ask, again, clarifying questions, share stories, experiences. And so, having that networking opportunity, kind of that one-on-one time is really key to this conference.
Awesome. So as well with some of the, if you wanted to share some of the examples of your end, then by all means. But I see here that we have the talking about beach leaf disease, talking about urine diversion, new hot topic for the Cape and Islands region. As we're continuing to see that water quality issue, we're just trying to see what else is out there for tools. Also talking more about the green sea turtles that are around. I'm assuming that that's going to be involving the Kemp's Ridley turtle and some of the rescue efforts you guys do. Can you just talk a little bit more about some of other examples or what kind of jumps out to you as an interesting topic people can look forward to?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, for 27 years now, those topics have kind of varied. And so I think the word, it's called Natural History Conference. And for the most part, there's a lot of natural history that's being shared, at this conference, everything from, understanding how seabirds migrate and, the different trends that they have, for example, in this one, to understanding green sea turtles and their prevalence, here on the Cape. But the conference too, it goes a little bit beyond natural history and goes into some environmental science or some of the environmental issues, that are kind of trending. And a lot of the trends that are happening right now, as we start to look at the impacts, especially here on the coast with climate change, flooding, all these rains and these storms and things that we see. A lot of the kind of recent research and recent projects have a lot to do with restoration, right? Habitat restoration, projects related to coastal resiliency. So, there is a chunk of presentations this round that looks just at that. We have Jordan Mora from the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, APCC. She'll be talking about the salt marsh loss and how to maybe combat that with different unique techniques. They're called nature-based solutions. So what's called runneling and ditch remediation, ways in which to restore the health of salt marshes, because we know salt marshes are so important for combating climate change and storm surges and the impacts of sea level rise. And not only that, but just their ecological benefit to healthy populations of fish and then those birds that we love to look at, come in and feed on those fish in the marshes, and all such. So, salt marsh restoration is a really an emerging and important tool and topic that will be at this conference. Similarly, the other thing is looking at similar wetlands in our area, cranberry bogs. Cranberry bogs across the state, as cranberry farming is a little bit on the decline, and some of those are becoming abandoned or just is not as profitable. They're looking at many of those bogs, looking at ways to restore them and to return them to their freshwater environments, which also, again, have very important roles. Similarly, I'll just mention that Tidmarsh Sanctuary, Mass Audubon Sanctuary in Plymouth is a really great example of a restoration project that happened, oh my gosh, sometimes years escape me, but I want to say it's at least 12 years now, that this was about a little over 400 acres of restored bogs that were former cranberry bogs that were then returned in this, almost like a rewilding project in which the bogs were turned back into their cold water stream habitats, what they were formerly. And so, returning red maple swamps and Atlantic white cedar swamps to that area, and also the surrounding forest. So again, a really exciting projects that are looking at ways in which to kind of heal our landscape for human benefit, ecological benefits going forward. So restoration is a big topic. But then, as you mentioned, we have everything from, also natural history, like the green sea turtles. We're looking at, sea turtles, I'll just clarify, don't nest on Cape Cod, but they do strand on Cape Cod during the winter months. So that's when we see them the most. But also sightings of the turtles will be in Cape Cod Bay and the Nantucket Sound during the summer months. You might see them if you go on the water. You might see them swimming around. And so green sea turtles have started to increase in numbers and seeing them a little bit more on Cape Cod. And so this is a presentation by Karen Dorteville and Jess Chacha, both Mass Audubon staff members here on the Cape, who will be looking a little bit more at the statistics and the prevalence of green sea turtles and what that means. Everything from that to also looking at Duck Harbor in Wellfleet, up in Wellfleet, and the restoration work that's being done as part of the Herring River restoration. But if anyone has been up in the Wellfleet area and seeing the storm surge and the at high tides, that whole entire area of Duck Harbor now getting almost returning to its harbor state like it used to be many, many years ago. So Katie Castagno from the Center for Coastal Studies will be looking a little bit at the kind of reconstructing the past of that harbor and also how the current changes are progressing and what that might mean for its future and how it relates to the restoration work. And then, as you mentioned, this year, a very unique topic that I don't think we've ever explored before, but, oh no, that's not true. We've done wastewater discussions before in this, but this is looking at, again, another hot topic is alternative septic system or alternative solutions to our waste, right? And so important in a coastal environment because, increased nitrogen, increased phosphorus, all that impacts our waterways, both the saltwater embayments as well as our freshwater ponds. And so, as septic systems, kind of age out, and as our population continues to grow with more input, it's important to kind of look at this and come up with some solutions and meet the goals of future, managing nitrogen levels in our embayments, because we need those healthy embayments.
Yeah, that's right. For our listeners, we did have indeed. We had two guests from the Green Center on just, I believe, a couple of weeks ago for Sunday Journal, and they did discuss a little bit more about the possibilities of urine diversion. So, yes, we are still talking about it again. It's going to be a routine topic, I'm sure, for the remainder of this year. It's a very interesting possibility, and it's been fascinating to learn more about. So, as well, we recently we just had a cranberry bog effort that is on Nantucket, the Windswept Bog Wetland Restoration Project. I believe they got $1 million to do the exact same thing that you just described, rewild more than 200 acres. It seems like that's going to be more and more common. I don't think I can drive more than 20 minutes on Cape Cod without seeing a cranberry bog. So it's very interesting to kind of think about them. I mean, I love my cranberries, don't get me wrong, but it is interesting that it's like, oh, are they damaging to the environment, essentially, because they take up so much space? I mean, is there a place for it? Do you think it's just like the Cape is just a little tough when it comes to that kind of agriculture, and it's just a little bit hard with climate change on the horizon? I mean, what are your thoughts, essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question, Grady. I think in part it's a market that that our region many years ago dominated, right, the cranberry market, right? But now the Midwest is a very large cranberry supplier. So I think it's more about market pressures probably, and also too, if you start to think about it, the cost of land, right? The land valuations here in our region might also might play into this as well. Some of the reasons why some of these bogs become abandoned or just passing on that tradition, the farming tradition in and of itself, right? That how many people are going into a farming lifestyle. So I think it's hard to point at one thing in particular. There might be many factors, but especially these are wetlands that had been altered, and so to be able to return them to a functioning state, a natural functioning state, in order to mitigate some of the effects of to help with water quality, to help with habitat generation, and as well as mitigating any effects of climate change, because some of these bogs are connected to salt water, right? Distantly, there's streams that will run into it. They're near a harbor or a saltwater embayment. And so it's restoring them then also expands the opportunity for the movement of marshes, right? Salt marshes, as sea level rise and climate change occurs, you need those salt marshes, the capacity for them to move inland or to move and migrate in order to retain them. So another example of the reason why restoration is so important.
It is very. I'm sure you guys are also well plugged into the restoration efforts for Herring River. I know that you already mentioned that before. I guess I did kind of want to just ask an expert on this. There's been so much money that goes into these efforts, and rightfully so. Some of it involves infrastructure removal. In the case of Herring River, there's the sluice gate. That's a whole construction effort and have to remove what's already there. But why? I mean, like $1 million. Can't we just let the cranberry bog just grow back in? Like in theory, could this be a little bit cheaper? Or like what does some of that money go towards? Essentially, what is the smart way to go about that? Why is there so much cost involved?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the expert for this conversation, but I think that just from I think it's about, again, understanding the value, right, of these types of environments and prioritizing them for a wide variety of reasons. And so, to return, just a kind of walking away and say from a bog or for something like that, and just letting nature, quote unquote, nature take its course, may or may not yield the results that you want. A good example is the Herring River in Wellfleet, right? That had been one in which, the water quality above the dike is and was horrible, right? And anoxic conditions, lacking of oxygen, there was acidic conditions, all sorts of issues. And so it was not a healthy environment. And so by investing and restoring up to 1,000 acres of salt marsh in that back area, is a huge gain. Because if we start to think about, again, the values of salt marshes in terms of their ability to buffer from the impacts of storms and surges. The fact that they're a nursery habitat for all sorts of commercially important finfish and shellfish species in other wildlife. But then also, too, their carbon sequestration. So there's a climate change component here. Salt marshes are among those environments that can store a lot of carbon, and that's really important.
Hmm. You mentioned the especially with the storm related the buffering. It's certainly hot on the heels. We had that pre-Valentine's Day storm, and with the potential for flooding. Luckily, there wasn't really major flooding that did occur during that storm. But it is certainly something to think about as we kind of come up right off the storm that we just experienced. So as well, I wanted to ask more about the involvement of Mass Audubon in the newly acquired Sea Camps property for the town of Barnstable, and kind of how you guys are going to be plugged into that. But before we switch topics, did you want to add anything else about this upcoming conference where people can learn more potentially or sign up if necessary?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, this conference can't happen without a couple of different things. Number one, all of the dedication and time that the presenters and the other organizations and the individuals that come to present. So, everything from, Cape Cod Commission will be represented there, APCC, Mass Audubon, at different levels. There's several, Mass Army National Guard will be there, several different consulting groups like Horsley Witten Group. So there's, just a wide variety of presenters and people who are taking the time out to dedicate a Saturday. Saturdays are precious in this world, right? Your time, but here are individuals who are passionate about their work, want to share information with the public and with colleagues, and taking their time out of their Saturday. So I just want to say, again, a huge shout out to all of those presenters who will be taking part. And similarly, the audience who comes, every year we get about just under 200 people attend this. And again, people just have a thirst and an interest in knowledge and wanting to learn more and engage with people. So again, thanks to all the presenters. And then just finally, thank you to our sponsors. We're able to keep this cost, the cost of this event low. It's only $25 per person. And that includes wonderful coffee and muffins and drinks from the Casual Gourmet. But we have the Birdwatchers General Store, the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, Wilkinson Ecological Design as our premier sponsors, and then we also have some steward sponsors, including the Cape Associates and Katuitt Solar. So again, just we want to shout out to those to help companies and businesses that help us offer this.
All right, awesome. Now, actually, I did have one last question related to kind of the outreach for the public, essentially. We've been chatting with the New England Aquarium. We talk with the Center for Coastal Studies all the time, and something that kind of routinely comes up is this whole citizen scientist thing, where people are kind of looking for, eyes and volunteers, essentially. Is this a little bit potentially of a recruitment campaign in a way of trying to kind of outreach to citizens that might be able to be more eyes and ears for those of your, particular conservative bend or conservation,
yeah,
I should
absolutely.
clarify.
I know, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just want to make sure I clarified conservation. Indeed, continue on. But yeah, citizen scientists, how do they play into this?
Absolutely. Yes. So, right. This is networking not only for the professionals and the conservationists in the field, but opportunities for people to get engaged in community science. And so, certainly, I'll just use us as an example. Mass Audubon here at our sanctuary, we're both at sanctuaries in Wellfleet Bay and Long Pasture. We have projects in which people can go out and help us monitor diamondback terrapins or spadefoot toads. These are species that are the diamondback terrapin, a threatened species in the state. And we have a nesting program in which we monitor the nesting females and help out the hatchlings. Everything from that to bird banding, to learn about bird migration studies. We have volunteers to support that. And I know, there was another organization, the New England Coastal Wildlife Alliance, NECWA. NECWA and Krill Carson, the founder of that, utilizes volunteers quite regularly. So absolutely, this is a way to, to learn about ways to get involved, not only get informed, but to get involved.
Melissa, a genius maneuver targeting specifically the bird watcher population on Cape Cod. A very passionate group of people, amongst them I am included, but it is definitely interesting to see. So as well, the Sea Camps property, there is a new place that people are going to be able to possibly enjoy in the near future for Barnstable. That is it's the old Sea Camps. Obviously, it's no longer the Sea Camps. That is now just
Yep.
town property. But you guys are apparently going to be involved in possibly making some offerings for activities and other stuff. Do you mind us chatting a little bit about what the ideas are?
Absolutely, absolutely, sure. Yeah, this is really exciting. And again, my gosh, time escapes me. I think it was 2 years ago that the residents of the town of Brewster voted to support the acquisition of the former Cape Cod Sea Camps property. And this was the Cape Cod Sea Camps properties is probably best known by the property that's on what they call the Bay property, which is on Route 6A. Very obvious where the sea camps, in the archery, fields and children running around for the camp. My gosh, it was in the Delahanty family for 100 years, I believe it was. It was a long-standing camp. But there was also another property that they owned and a little less known, and that's the Long Pond, which is Long Pond is one of the largest, if not the largest, freshwater body on Cape Cod. It's split between the town of Harwich and Brewster, and kind of I believe it's northeast end of it. There's was the town, excuse me, the sea camps owned, and now the town owns 66 acres on right there. It's a woodland in pine woods forest, primarily pine oak forest, and then with also freshwater beach. And so those two properties have been acquired by the town of Brewster. And in order to kind of help, with the costs of acquiring those, two organizations or several, stepped up, but Mass Audubon and the Brewster Conservation Trust have pledged. And so I'll just speak to Mass Audubon's pledge. It's actually a total of $3.5 million. We pledged $1.5 million to the acquisition of the Long Pond parcel, and then recently have also been approved $2 million for the Bayside parcel. And the in kind of the relationship that we're, again, these are pledges, and I'll just mention that there's a lot of great information on the town's website about this project, and the town has been going through the past couple of years through a community engagement process. Hired a consulting firm, convened a committee, two committees for the Bay parcel and as well as the Pond parcel, to kind of again gauge the public's interest about what will these properties do, what will be on these properties, how will they be utilized and preserved. And so myself, I have sat in as a liaison on the Pond Committee, as well as a staff member, Katie Fife, has sat in on the Bay property. And it's been a great process for 2 years. Again, actually tonight, now that I think about it, tonight is the final community forum for the town of Brewster, is hosting the final community forum. This is the fourth community forum on which the residents have had a chance to kind of weigh in on plans and ideas related to both parcels. And so tonight's they'll unveil the final plan, which includes, a wide scope. But Mass Audubon's involvement is not only is for the conservation of Long Pond, right, to hold a conservation restriction on 56 of the 66 acres on the Long Pond parcel, as well as 10 acres on the Bay parcel. So we are, of course, interested in the conservation values of these pieces, but also the educational opportunities. So to your point early on, you mentioned, these are going to be open to the public. That's very exciting, right? Especially to the Brewster residents. These were two properties that previously were privately held. And so now they will have the opportunity for people to get out and experience them and to benefit from all that they provide.
All right, awesome, Melissa. I'm afraid that's about all the time that we have, but thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Before we wrap up, is there any last comments that you wanted to add about stuff going on at Mass Audubon before we close out?
I'll just say it's an exciting time of year. There's always things going on. So if our trails are open 365 days out of the year, so find a sanctuary near you There's many of them have scattered across the state, and we actually have 8 of them here on Cape Cod that have trails, and 2 with nature centers. So find the closest one near you and get outside and just enjoy these. My gosh, it's a bluebird sky day today, so uh, enjoy it.
All right, awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Grady.